I'm going to video record this today for those people who aren't here. Okay, I mean this will be so exciting for all of you that you may want to watch it again and again on YouTube. Okay, did you find the YouTube thing?
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah?
Yeah.
Pretty exciting, right? Yeah.
Side profile.
Yeah, I know. The AV stuff is not exactly extraordinary. Okay, but I will put this up on YouTube for those people who are there. I'll let you know. It takes hours to upload one of these videos, so it won't be right away. Okay, so the theme for more or less the middle part of this course is teams, leadership in teams. And in the last session we talked about multi-professional teams, and now we're going to talk about multicultural teams. And there are a number of articles in the reading that will supplement what I'm going to talk about, and I would really encourage you to read this stuff. I came upon the person who I'm going to talk about, Erin Meyer, in the Harvard Business Review. And she wrote a couple articles, and then I found her book, and then I found some other stuff to read. In the business world today, most of the big corporations are multinational corporations, and so you need representatives from different countries to meet together, whether it's virtually, and often they'll meet by video, or live. And how do people communicate? How do they make decisions? And she tells a story in one of her papers of a guy who, if I remember correctly, is Dutch, and he's working for some business. It doesn't matter. I think maybe Heineken, the brewing company. I don't know, it doesn't matter. He's working for a Dutch company, and he gets sent to South America to work, and it's really a problem because he doesn't understand the people who work for him, and they don't understand him. And then over a period of time, he accommodates to that, and then he gets sent back to the Netherlands, and it's a disaster again because he's acting as if he's in Latin America. So being aware of the cultural sensitivity is what we're going to talk about. And like a lot of this other stuff in leadership, these are her theories, her explanations. I'm sure that there are other people who give other explanations that are similar but not the same. But we'll use hers because it's a good construct for me, and I think you'll get the sense for it. Okay. So she says that there are 8 different issues with cultural communication. 8 different. Yeah. This PowerPoint is already on Moodle, okay, just so you know. All right, so we're going to go through these. Communicating, evaluating, persuading, leading, deciding, trusting, disagreeing, and scheduling. And her point is, let's take scheduling as a simple example, that people in one culture will schedule differently from people in another culture, okay? As you may have heard, my wonderful news this week is that I finally got our lamp fixed. This is a lamp that sits over our dining room table. It's an expensive lamp, okay? And it stopped working. It was relatively new, but not quite new enough. And it took us about 8 months to get it fixed, okay? And the story last week, the part was in, it was fixed, it was ready to go, and the electrician said, I will be there on Wednesday. Last week. So I got all ready, I waited, so he didn't come. Okay, and then every day I contacted him until, I guess, Monday, when we agreed that he would come on Tuesday. And he did finally come. So he's a week late. And he was perfectly comfortable with that, because this is Israel, okay? In the United States, if they say Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning, it'll be between 10 and 10:30 in the morning, and they'll be there, okay? About 90% of the time, right? So that's a difference. That's a cultural difference, okay? All right, so What she's done is take, and she's a business person, but it doesn't matter. It's the same point, I think. She's taken these areas: communicating, evaluating, persuading, and leading, deciding, trusting, disagreeing, scheduling, and she puts them on a scale from this side to this side, okay? And then she takes a country. In this case, one of these countries is Israel and the other is Russia, okay? And she compares them, okay? Or she reports them. And so we're going to try to understand what these things are. You can see that there isn't much difference between Russians and Israelis. This is just coincidental that she's picked these. The Israelis are red, okay? And we're gonna go through and define each of these in a little while. So the communication style, the language between Israelis and Russians are pretty similar. But the persuading is distinctly different, as is the leading style. Okay? So the point with this, as an example, is if you can understand the culture that you're dealing with, someone's culture, you will have a better ability to communicate with them.
So how does that the points we just like differentiate? Because I didn't understand the language.
Okay, let's go on, and I think hopefully you'll understand it. Well, let me try. Okay, so here's leading, and the scale of leading is anywhere from egalitarian to hierarchical. Okay, and we're going to go through each of these, and I'll explain them. The point is that the Russians are very hierarchical in their leading style, and the Israelis are very egalitarian. So it's a slider. Okay? Can you help? Okay. Okay, this is the same thing, so let's keep going. Now, she also combines these to some degree, okay? So here you have groups of people who are emotionally expressive and emotionally unexpressive. And yet, putting it on a 4-side scale, confrontational or not confrontational. Yeah, what are you thinking
I
here?
love Israel. Israel is confrontational and emotionally expressive, but that's so true.
Right? Right?
That's awesome.
So, Barbara and I spent a week in Sweden at a hospital studying, interacting with them. This is some years ago. And it was in northern Sweden. And northern Sweden is more isolated and more Swedish than southern Sweden. Stockholm's a cosmopolitan city. As a tourist, anybody been to Stockholm?
I live there.
You live there. It's nice to live there. It's very cosmopolitan. It's fine, right? Did you go north?
Mm-hmm.
This was Umeå, okay? So we stayed in a hotel, small hotel that was owned by the university. And they had, like most places, they had breakfast provided. And so there were maybe 100 people sitting and having breakfast in perfect silence. Because the Swedes, they don't talk. Okay, they're going to be non-confrontational, non-emotional. Okay, so very quiet. The Japanese are unexpressive, emotionally unexpressive, and they avoid open confrontation. That's a part of the East Asian culture. And it would make sense, the British are over here too, right? They tend not to be, I mean, we talked about Churchill, huh? Very modulated. These are the people who, Barbara and I took a cruise once on an Italian cruise ship. It was so noisy and energized, and people were talking and arguing and loving and fighting with each other all within about 2 minutes. Okay? So, appreciate that. If you're dealing with a colleague in Japan, they are not going to tell you when they're angry. You're going to have to figure it out, okay? Whereas an Israeli or a Russian or somebody from France may seem to be angrier than they really are, right? how many of you have had political discussions here in Israel? Right? I mean, there's arguing and hollering and this and that, and then everybody's done and they're done, right? Doesn't linger. Whereas in the States, you'd have a residual level of anger or upset, at least. Okay. You know what? I think, yeah, let's do this. Okay. Just entertaining you with my slide changes, okay? Okay, what we're going to do, I thought I had another slide on this. I'm going to define each of these for you, okay? So what we're going to look at is the scale, not Israel versus Russia. Communicating low context versus high context. Anybody have any idea what that means? This is the hardest one to understand, and I'm sorry it's the first. Low context, any? Becca? Adina, go ahead.
I was just thinking, is that like giving the background to a situation as opposed to just like jumping right in?
Well, it's sort of. Let me read the definitions to you. Okay, hard. I have to read it because it always mixes me up. Good communication is precise, simple, and clear. This is low context. Messages are expressed and understood at face value. Repetition is appreciated if it helps clarify the communication. Versus high context. Good communication is sophisticated, nuanced, and layered. Messages are spoken and read between the lines. Messages are often implied but not plainly expressed. So these definitions are all in Moodle as well for you. Okay, so let's compare the US and the UK.
UK is more low context, US is more high context.
Right. Let's compare India and the US.
US is low context and India is high context.
High context, right? You don't say it, you just imply it. Okay? Now, in the US, I'm used to saying something 2-3 times, right? That's part of our culture. If you say something 3 times in a different culture, in a high context culture, then you may be insulting the person. The Japanese are very high context.
No, they're very low context, aren't
I
You just
no.
said low context is clear and to the point, and high
Yeah,
context.
I don't think I think there's a lot of subtlety in Japanese.
But you said that the US is low context?
US is low context.
If you compare
We say it, we're absolute about it. We're very direct in the US. In relationship to these other cultures. You don't buy this? I'm pretty sure. We'll see. I have them
I
all.
don't understand what you're saying. Like they're very kind of to the point. But then there also there is another level of like subtlety.
I don't know. Let's hold on Japan. I don't know that I have it to show you exactly what she says Japan is.
But I would put US probably in the middle. I wouldn't put them I wouldn't say they're low context, because even though people are direct, there's also a lot of hidden meaning in what people say.
Sure, there is in all language. Okay, there is. The French are more high context than we are in the States. Okay, it's interesting. The French language has something like 9,000 words, and the American language has like 50,000 words. Or I don't know if the number is right, but the English has like 4 times the number of words. Hebrew has a small vocabulary, right? So to understand, I've been told to understand Hebrew, you have to put the word in the context. Daphne, would you agree with that? Same word can have different meanings.
I need to think of an example. That would make sense. So they also borrow a lot of words from different languages.
Different languages,
as well.
right.
Yeah. That
Okay,
makes sense.
let's go on, because we gotta cover this. Evaluating. Okay, so in some countries there is direct negative feedback, and in other countries there is indirect negative feedback. So let's take the US and the UK again. Where will the UK be versus the US?
More indirect.
UK will be more indirect, and India will be
Indirect.
indirect, even more indirect. Okay. What about the Netherlands? Scandinavian countries. Pretty direct. Germany, they'll tell you when they don't like it. Maybe even more than the US. Okay. Persuading. Let me define that, because that one is a little complicated as well. Individuals have been trained to first develop the theory of complex concept before presenting a fact, statement, or opinion. The preference is to begin a message of report by building a theoretical argument before moving on to a conclusion. The conceptual principles underlying each situation are valued. Versus, that's concept first. Principles first. Okay. Versus application first. Individuals are trained to begin with a fact, statement or opinion, and later add concepts to back it up or explain the conclusion as necessary. The preference is to begin a message or report with an executive summary of bullet points. Discussions are approached in a practical, concrete manner. Theoretical or philosophical discussions are avoided. Okay, so if you think about the Myers-Briggs, the logistical people